Hi everyone, great to see you. So in this video I'm going to start to walk you through all of those custom shader patch settings to show you which ones will give you the best performance, which ones will give you the best quality, and to hopefully answer some of your questions and take away some of the mystery. This is the first part of a 3-part series. So let's jump right in then guys. So what we're going to do is click on settings and we're going to click on custom shader patch and we're going to start on about and updates. So today, because there's quite a lot of information in these videos, I was going to do one really long video, but I thought it's probably better to break this down into 2 or 3 pieces. So on this video today, this is part 1 of probably 3 parts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to DXGI, which is all these top sections here. And then the next 2 videos will cover the rest of the sections because there are quite a lot of settings in there that we can go through. So let's start on about and updates. Now I'm going to go through these settings and talk a lot about what I put on my machine, what some of the effects will do, what some of the additions will do, and actually some of the ways that you can change these custom shader patch settings for your rig and for your setup to give you either better performance or better graphical quality. So first things first then, so when we click on settings and custom shader patch, the first piece you will come to is about and updates. So this looks pretty simple, but I'm just going to talk through how this works and how I've used it in the past. So at the moment you can see I've got 0.1.69 preview 1 installed. Now this is the special preview version of the rain patch, so this is the full rain integration with custom shader patch and Sol. And if you've not seen that yet, do check out the last couple of videos on my channel, which is the Sol 2.0 walkthrough and the Sol 2.0 and custom shader patch 1.69 preview walkthrough. They're both very cool tutorials that will show you how that works. Now I've actually got this installed now, and as it's a preview version I can't actually do some of the check updates, and as you can see they're not available to install. So because I've joined the Patreon and I've got this special preview version, I can use it, but it's not working like the other versions will down here. So what I'm going to do is drop down onto one of the versions that most of you will be on. So if I click on 1.68 there, you'll see there straight away the custom shader patch has downgraded successfully and it's installed that. So I'm actually running the 1.68 patch now. If I click on that patch, I can't click on it, so I'll have to install that manually. So I've actually got the manual patch here from Patreon. This is the 1.69. so what you would normally do is just drag and drop that into here and install it there. What I have found though is if you are going to, let me just get rid of that, if you are going to reinstall that, I would just close Content Manager down and reopen Content Manager. So therefore the 1.69 is not on the top there. Now look, it's actually gone and I'm at 1.68. You'll just drag that across again and then we can install there. And that's put me again on the 1.69. So just to show you around this a little bit more, I'm just going to go onto the standard 1.68 version, and that's where we are now. So there's a couple of things you can do on here. So the check for updates button will automatically do a checked version. This unlock button here will actually unlock that version of the custom shader patch, so it will actually automatically update. So it's really down to you whether you do that or not. I just like to leave it locked just so I know which version I'm actually installing and what it's actually doing. So talking about that, let's just look at some of the patch notes that we've got here. So on all of these available versions, you'll see you've got different patch versions that come up and the different notes that come up with the patch versions. So there is an incredible amount of work that's going on this all the time. And in the time I've been playing Assetto Corsa, over especially in a more detailed way over the last 6 months, I mean we've gone up a number of versions on these patches. Now this patch here 1.68 is untested, and you will see that some of them actually say buggy on them. So it's really down to you what you want to do. 1.60 is classed as the stable version. So if you wanted to go down to there, it would just drop down to 1.60. But to be honest, I've not had any problems with the yellow untested versions, and I think they're pretty stable. You might get the odd bug or odd crash, but again it depends how you're using Assetto Corsa and what mods you're using on Assetto Corsa. So for this walkthrough here, I'm just going to leave it on 1.68. So that's the main about and update. So let's move on to some of the other areas here. So the next area is cars and configs. The car and config section actually gives you a number of presets for each of the cars that you may have installed. And as you can see here, I've got a large number of cars installed. There's no wonder my hard drive is creaking at the pressure from Assetto Corsa mods. Okay, so let's just scroll back up. So you can actually install these manually, or you can install them automatically. So if I was to look at one here, look, this has got the download. It is downloaded. We've got a no on this Arbarth 595 SS Step 2. If you were to right click on there and look at features, this is actually saying that there's an odometer feature here on the latest version. So you can install now and you get a little yes there. Now this is one of those sections that I've always just normally skipped over, but clearly if you've got something on a car that you think could be a little bit better or something not working, it's definitely worth going in here and just having a look to see if there's any other features. So this one's got a deforming mesh feature and I've not installed it, so I've just installed it there, look. Now to make this simple, if you move to the top and you press here, install automatically recommended. So we've got that ticked. But I believe this works on the cars that you're actually running, and it may download in the background once you've started to play in a car. But if you are going to play in your favorite car, or there's a new car that you've got, it's definitely worth having a look through here to see if there's either a fix to a problem you've got or an addition to make the car even better. This is definitely worth looking in here, and this is something I've skipped over in the past, but I'll definitely keep an eye on now. So moving on to the next section, which is car textures. This is again very similar. So this is saying updates that are available for the cars that you've got for car textures. Some car configs refer to extra texture packs. These won't take a lot of time and could improve experience. For example, tyres could change textures depending on what is selected in pits. So there's a number of different updates here. So again, if I wanted to install one of these, just right click on it. Just click on install. Yes, so I think it's worth installing all of those, and again especially if you've got a particular car or a favorite car that you're using and there is an issue or you want some extra features on there. So the car VAO section is the Vertex AO patches for cars. So this is with per vertex ambient occlusion data, cars get deeper looking exterior interiors. So again, looking at what I've got downloaded here, and it may just be the cars that I've actually driven. I know I've driven that car. I think I've driven that car too. So you can see that I've not downloaded hardly any of these. So definitely worth going through that as well, and to see if there's any new features that will add to your enjoyment of Assetto Corsas. And then we've got the same on track configs. So this is probably more important if you're going through a number of different tracks, so you've got a lot of modded tracks on your Assetto Corsa. So as you can see, I have, and there is some here that haven't been installed, and there are lots that have. So again, going through that, so Donington Park, one of my favourite, you see I've actually run that recently, and so that has been downloaded, and again I think it's on automatically there, yes. So it must be the tracks and the cars that you've actually used. So again, check through this. So these track configs carefully prepared by the community, fantastic community we have. The track configs not only specify where to position various light sources, but also add new objects like lampposts, etc. And they adjust materials to give tracks more realistic, often meaning properly saturated looks. So again, definitely worth going through here, especially if you're going onto a new track that you've downloaded or a new modded track, and seeing if there's anything for you to update, and do double check that's on automatic as well. And I think that's the default setting unless you've changed that. Tracks VAO, very, very similar. So let's have a look at the top one here that I've not installed. So if you were to right click on there and install, that will download and install that and go green. With per vertex ambient occlusion data, tracks get some of those smooth ambient light shadows for practically nothing. So definitely worth doing. And again, you can see I've got a number of different tracks here that I've driven that have all gone to yes, but there's nothing wrong with going through those and installing those all manually. And then the last one in this top section is backgrounds. Now there are a couple of cool little mods that change this. So if you look on Race Department, there are some mods that I've seen where some of the guys are actually putting different screenshots on for the front of the tracks. What this does though, this is to freshen up loading screens. Patch has an option of showing an image of a track being loaded. It would look for your screenshots or favorite images, all optional, but if nothing found, it would try to use one of the images shared on GitHub repo. So Barcelona number 1, install now. So the next time I go on to Barcelona number 1, that will actually show me a very different screenshot, or one of my own screenshots, depending on if I've been on there before. Next up then is one of the bigger sections, and that is general patch settings. So let's click on here. So these are settings that aren't related to any specific extension. So these are more general settings for custom shader patch. So the first one and the most obvious is, do you want shader patch to actually be on? I assume you do, you've installed it, so leave that as active. Obviously that will have a significant impact on how the graphics look if you take custom shader patch off, but it's also worth just checking on that if you gain any problems with your Assetto Corsa, any problems running the game, and you think that custom shader patch is actually causing that problem, take it off, restart your computer, try Content Manager again and try Assetto Corsa and to see if that fixes it. That could well help you out to troubleshoot any problems you have there. Now a lot of these other settings I actually don't touch, and I just leave them as they are. So developer settings, we just leave those where they are. Apps, we leave those where they are. Control, again, leave those where they are. Now the allowed cameras is an interesting one. So I do actually use bumper cameras quite a lot, and bonnet cameras. You've probably seen that on some of my videos. Obviously cockpit you would use, and dashboard cam, but these chase cam ones, you know, some people use them, some people don't. I do actually use them, so I just leave all those switched on. It's no interest for me to switch those off. And this pause orbit camera if mouse is somewhere else, that actually is very useful if you're using 2 or 3 screens. I use 2 screens, and if you do move your mouse cursor off the side of the screen, then that will actually stop the camera where it is. So it's just an annoyance that you can go onto another screen even while playing the game. It's just the way that the configs work. So I would leave that one on as well. Track camera options, disable camera wobble. If you've got a camera wobble, I think that's a good thing. I think it adds to the realism, so I've not disabled that. Now this audio section here has a couple of cool things on here. So alter pitch in slow motion, this is new for 1.68. So I think this is really cool, and I've actually clicked that on. So that means that when you're in slow motion, and I do some slow motion footage also, it just changes the way that the sound works. So that's quite cool. Add some delay with distance. Now I'm actually going to put that on because I think that again adds to the realism. There is only a very small delay. And as you can see here, you can adjust that delay. So I would actually have a play about with that, and especially if you're doing some of the replays and you're racing around some of the larger tracks, I think that would add to the realism, so I'll leave that on. You do have the option here to use exterior sounds everywhere or interior sounds everywhere. So if you're on the outside of the car and you're in the chase cam, you could choose to still have interior sounds, and vice versa. If you're interior to the car, you could have the exterior sounds. So I'm not going to click either one of those. Fixed stereo sound in VR, I've got that clicked. I do use Assetto Corsa in VR, and I am going to do some videos in VR, but my issue with videos in VR is that the quality is sometimes not quite as good. What this actually does for the user experience in VR is when you move your head left and right, it actually changes the way the sound comes through your earphones, which is really cool. It makes it more realistic. So we've left that clicked, and as I said, that's really for my own personal preference. This one's an interesting one, disable brake sounds. There are some incredible brake sounds in Assetto Corsa, but some of them are quite loud, some of them are quite squealy. Depends on the age of the car that you're driving, and also obviously what kind of brakes they've got on, ceramic, etc. So I would just I would leave that with an uncheck on there. So I don't want to disable that because I quite like those, but you can actually click on there and change the way that the sounds actually come through. Fix missing gear sound with frequent shifting. I've never really had any problems with the way that the gears work on Assetto Corsa. Again, it may help with a particular car if you're driving a particular car with an issue, but I've just got that ticked there. Now this opponent's volume multiplier here. So this is an interesting one as well, because I actually think the sounds on Assetto Corsa are pretty cool as they are, and I've left that on 100%. But if you do want the cars as they go past you, or if you're behind a car, or if you're in chase cam, if you want the other cars to sound louder, this is what you would move up and down. So if you were to move it to, I don't know, 150, can't get it on 150, 150, or 120, you will actually increase the volume for the other cars. So you might find that more realistic, and again it depends on the cars, as a lot of the car sounds on Assetto Corsa are very different, and some of them are more generic, and some of them there are some incredible sound banks for some of the cars on Assetto Corsa. So again, it depends on the race that you're in. It could get really loud and annoying depending on the kind of engines that you're racing against in the other cars, so really up to you. But an interesting one there just to have a bit of a play about with and see what fits with the way that you want to run Assetto Corsa. Custom fonts rendering, just active, and hardware acceleration active, not touch those. Now these optimizations here, I think all of these optimizations are really down to what you feel your PC is running like, and the actual frames per second that you're getting on your game. Now I'm very lucky with my rig, because I have a 1080 Ti, which is obviously a very capable car. My CPU 2600, it's ready for an upgrade, and I'm gonna create and build a new rig in the new year. But I don't really have any performance issues. Most of my Assetto Corsa is running at 120 to 140 frames per second, so I'm not really going to mess about with any of these. But I do know that some of you will have very different rigs with different video cards in and different CPUs. So if you are starting to see some issues there, these are some of the first places I would go, just to see if you can get any performance gains. And you can then run side-by-side comparisons, looking at the frames per second in the developer apps when you're running the game, and to see how your replays work. So if you've got a replay of your gameplay, you can keep rerunning it and just change some of these settings and just double check how that affects your frames per second. So I'm not really going to go through these. I have optimized some of these. I've kind of left them as they were when they came out of the packet with this version of custom shader patch. But again, some settings there where you can improve your experience on Assetto Corsa. Next up is brake disc effects. So this has been out on a number of the previous versions of this patch, and I've got it active here. So what does this do? So it increases the ambient lighting on tyres in cloudy weather. It creates shadows in the wheel arches. It's separate tyre and rim shadows to make the rim shadows smoother. It's got dynamic heat and colour, fake brake disc reflections, and it does account for suspension movements as well. So this actually creates quite a cool effect, and if you've seen on some of the replays on my videos or on other videos that you've seen, or even on your own replays, you will see that brake discs actually heat up different colours depending on how much you're pushing them around the corners. So really cool effect. I would definitely have it on. Obviously, if you've got some performance issues, take it off, see how it looks, and see what kind of frames per second increases you may get by switching it off. Initial wear, I've not really messed with any of these, but of course, if you do want to do some slow motion replays or get the camera zooming into some of these brake discs, then I'm sure there's some fantastic things that you can do here. But for me, I just leave that as pretty standard. Okay, next up is car instruments. So as it says here, a bunch of new features for cars. Unfortunately, things like reverse lights or turn signals require separate meshes, but this part of the patch allows this to be injected and to replace the meshes in the KN5 files. That's the main files for the cars. So just to go through some of the features in more details here. So you've got turning signals and hazard lights, obviously reversing lights, cornering lamps if the car has got that, analog and digital odometers synced with the stereo odometer app with Sidekick or with AC Content Manager. On some cars you have open door lights. Obviously there's all the various dashboard indicators as well, stored engine, batteries, ABS, etc, etc. On some of the more modern cars, hazard lights turned on with intense braking or in crashes. You've got good support here as well for analog clocks, for breakable lights. Also have the options of speedometers being synced with the drive shaft instead of using the absolute car speed, impulse tachometers for old cars. You get the idea that there's a lot of options that are here. So I always leave this active, but there are some different options that you can switch on and off. So for instance, headlights will brake in crashes, so you can turn that off and on. And I did do a recent video on how to change the decals or the detail of the graphics of when headlights and windscreen crashes, so do check that out if you've not seen that before. Deform HUDs a bit on crashes, so that's actually on at the moment. Turn on adjustable wings, use emergency braking hazards. You get the idea. So there are lots of different options here. Definitely have it active. There are also some other options here, but I just leave those on default. Next up is chaser camera. So this is a custom chase camera. It could be much more chase than regular one depending on what script you would like to use. So I don't actually have this active at the moment, but just to give you a bit more information on this, so the scripts are written via Lua, Lua, so you can create your own scripts effectively. But what you can do, if I click this as active, you can change the way that your chase works anyway. So you've got arcade mode 1 and arcade mode 2, and you've got base, which is the standard version, and you've also got drone there. So I'm just going to switch this off because I don't use chase too much, and I quite like how it works with the way I've got it set up at the moment. But what you can also do then, if you've got an Xbox controller installed on your PC, you can actually change the way that that works too. So I'm going to leave that as non-active for me, but again, feel free to have a play about with that. That feels like something that you could get some great replays going with. The next one is chat shortcuts. This is something I've not really used. I would imagine it's used mainly for online racing. And as you can see, I've not got it active, but what you can actually do is set up custom messages here for all your keys. So for instance, if you wanted to change this one, you could say have a nice day. So if you press key 1 when you're actually racing in the game, that's what it will come up with on the chat. So this is obviously very useful. They're all configurable. There's quite a lot to configure there. So you've got lots of options. Please don't put any swear words in there. Be nice to your fellow racers. But great for when you're online racing. Very useful, and means that you can carry on racing instead of trying to mess about with typing messages in while you're racing down some long straight. The really useful ones obviously are things like be careful please, got to go to the pits, coming through, very useful if you're trying to overtake someone. Do have a play about with those. They are the chat shortcuts. Okay, next one is DXGI. So the DXGI options give us various tweaks for DirectX graphics infrastructure, and this requires Windows 10 to work. I would imagine that most of us are on Windows 10. I'm not even sure if Assetto Corsa is still supported under anything else other than Windows 10. But the main active part that we have here, which is new, which I have actually highlighted, is this option allows to draw directly to DWM Desktop Windows Manager instead of making DWM to copy whole image, then repainting Windows improves performance. So I've clicked on that not because I've got any performance issues, simply because it's an option that may give me a little bit of performance gains. So I've put it on and I've not had any options since I've had it on. So the next two sections are for 4K HDR support. Now I actually run Assetto Corsa in 2K, so these aren't activated for me. I don't need to use them. But if you are running in 4K, you can activate these, and then you can change some of these sliders to get it looking exactly as you want to. And that's always the most important thing with custom shader patch. It's always the balance between quality and how good it's going to look versus the performance that you've actually got with your rig, your video card, memory, CPU, etc. So that's it then, guys. So that's the first section. I'm going to stop on DXGI because I'm just conscious of the length of the video. So this is part 1. So I will put out part 2 and part 3 over the next week or so. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. There are a lot of tutorials and guides on my channel, so do check those out, whether it's cars that you're looking for, tracks, or whether it's just some of the other tutorials and guides on how to get the best graphics out of Assetto Corsa. Thank you so much for all of your support, and do remember, if you like the video, clicking on that like button really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you very soon.